United States of America, which has made it very clear to Iran that if it responds, then United States will come to the defense of Israel. United States has called Israeli strikes proportional. The United States in a statement has said the response was proportionate. We sent a message to Iran that if it responds, we will defend Israel. Senior Biden administration officials said Israel's strikes on military strike appears to have been targeted and proportional, and that it should be the end of the direct exchange of fire between both the nations. This is the United States of America coming out with a statement and a warning also for Iran. It is the United States which has said that we want to make it very clear to Iran that now if it responds, it will be the United States of America that will defend Israel. Joining me on the broadcast, Adrian now, who's a terrorism and Middle Eastern scholar. Also joining me, Shiv. Shiv, take it away. Can you hear me, Shiv? Can you hear me, Shiv? Joining me on the broadcast, Adrian Calamy, who's a terrorism and Middle Eastern scholar and also a fellow at the Arabian Peninsula Institute. Adrian, we are now seeing a proxy war, and this is what everyone has globally known, that this in fact is also a direct confrontation but also a proxy war of sorts taking place. Where do you believe this war will head to over the coming months? Because now we are seeing United States also making very clear statements, sending out a stern message to Iran, saying what has happened was proportional, but you should not have a retaliatory stance now.
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for having me on the show. What we see right now is, I was listening to Shiv's comments before. It was that statement that we can reach out, that we can touch you, that we can inflict enough damage, and that's certainly the message that Israel wants to send to the Islamic Republic. Now, did the Islamic Republic get that message loud and clear? I'm not sure if they did. The first time Israel struck back after Islamic Republic barrage, they took out an S-300 site, which was a radar site protecting one of the nuclear facilities. This time, they took out, it would look like a bunch of radar stations, and then hitting a bunch of drone factories and missile factories. Once the dust clears, we'll see. Now, the big question is, has deterrence been restored? I don't know if it has. The Islamic Republic also, you mentioned, great point, war by proxy. This has always been a war by proxy. That's the game that the Islamic Republic wants to play. Truthfully, they don't want a direct confrontation with Israel, but they have been crossing that line. And this is the first time that we've seen in this conflict with the Islamic Republic launching missiles directly from their soil at Israel.
Is it likely that Iran will retaliate to this, or does this bring closure to the October 1st attack? There was always a certainty that Israel would respond, because that was 180 ballistic missiles plus that were launched at Israeli facilities. Does this in some way kind of close that book and move this conflict to the next, whatever chapter comes ahead?
I would hope so. I mean, great question, and I would absolutely hope so. I am just not sure enough that Israel did enough to reestablish deterrence. And one of the things that I think they needed to do, that they needed to take that extra step, was to target the oil facilities of the Islamic Republic, because that's how they fuel the proxies. As I said before, it's war by proxy, and this is how they fuel Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the Iraqi proxies, you name it. So I'm not sure if it's enough. We're going to have to wait and see, because this is still fog of war, and we'll see what the damage assessment is tomorrow.
Is it possible, Adrian, that direct economic facilities like oil facilities or ports were not targeted, perhaps because the United States, has an election coming up, and they wouldn't have wanted that, and also the possibility of an oil terminal being struck would have, more directly possibly triggered a larger kind of escalation with, Russia maybe wanting to, step in some way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it would have triggered a larger escalation drawing in Russia. I think the Russians are probably upset that the drone and missile factories have been hit because the
Yeah.
Islamic Republic has been sending them there. You do bring up a great point. I wouldn't be surprised if pressure came down from the United States not to hit those oil facilities, even though the United States is not an importer of
Yeah.
Iranian oil.
Yeah. Could you give us your reading, Adrian, of what you think might actually happen next? The talk of a disengagement in terms of a de-escalation, some kind of a ceasefire agreement. Do you think that the air becomes more clear towards at least talking about that? Both sides have had their say, quote unquote, with their missiles now. Does the atmosphere become a little more conducive towards ceasefire talks?
I really think it does become more conducive only because the fact because Tehran is absolutely reeling right now.
Yeah.
Their number one threat and their greatest threat to Israel has always been Hezbollah, or not always, but in recent years, the last 20 something years, it's been Hezbollah, and they've been absolutely decimated. If you look at the Houthis, they've been hit. Does the Islamic Republic resort and go back to war by proxy, or do they go back to this type of uh, terrorist attacks that they're known for, such as hitting Israeli embassies in Argentina or a cultural
Mm.
center in Argentina or striking targets in India? They have made several attempts in India in the past. So we'll have to see. I would think that the Islamic Republic would want to pivot away from this direct confrontation and move
Yeah.
it more towards get it away from the region. It's not going in their favor right now. Hamas is a spent force, at least in Gaza. So
Final question, Adrian, in that case is, with the US election just a couple of weeks away now, what kind of bearing do you think that will have on the way things pan out now between Israel and the forces surrounding it? Do you think it's going to have a kind of calming effect, the election?
That's a great question, and I'm not quite sure because if you look at the Islamic Republic's strategy, this war against Israel and these attacks, it's also a war against the West, and we know that the Islamic Republic is openly trying to meddle in the U.S. elections. Now, does it benefit them one way or another? I think U.S. being uncertain of who the next
Yeah.
president is and how it will influence will work in the Islamic Republic's favor. But any communication coming from Biden, you have to remember he's a lame duck. He's a lame duck president at this point.
Yeah.